Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. We have a great story in store for you. First, let's welcome Johnny Bonzo on the drums, everybody. What was that? Did you really? I'm so glad all the microphones are over here. Seriously. Anyways, moving forward, we have an epic in store for you today. A quest on another ocean. We join Flower Boy as he's sailing off into the distant sky. Godspeed you, Flower Boy.
Thanks for joining me for this interview. I really appreciate it. Let's start off with expectations, which is a major theme of the record. What are yours going into the project?
Just listening to it, like I'm a big Fleet Foxes fan in general. So, going into it, I was expecting a lot more of the very functional harmony that they use, like the very 1-4-5-1, type of music that they typically have, while keeping to the vocal style they usually do with the vocal texture, and then just like the typical countries, indie, what's the other word? Not like rustic type of feel. It's not really country.
Sure.
I was expecting more of that and more lightheartedness, like with some references to like some Greek mythology or some Greek history, like that they typically do. But this album seems a little bit more dense than that.
First impressions. What stuck out to you that you haven't heard in a Fleet Foxes album before?
Well, because at first listen, it's hard to pick up on this stuff, and it's hard to really enjoy this stuff because I feel like there's a lot of non-functional harmony in these songs. So you don't have the typical 1-4-5-1 or the 1-4-6-5-1. You don't have the harmonies that work. My biggest example was Mirkstapa. I'm probably butchering the name of that one too, but they primarily use just two chords.
Okay.
Two chords that do not function together in normal functional harmony, which gives it this like ethereal, like floating feel, where the
Right,
song
right.
never really feels like it's going anywhere. It's more like, it's less of a song about direction, and it's a song about creating a mood.
Gotcha.
And where
Yeah.
where you can really see a lot of like these sounds I'm talking about is like in video game music, especially like if you ever play Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, a lot of JRPGs where like they try to set the mood and it's a little mysterious and whatnot. And I feel like this whole album really goes for that. While they still do kind of break into their normal sound,
Yeah.
they are very, very explorative in their harmonies and their textures.
See, I had pick up like rounds of strings on the long outro of track 7, Your Skepta. Did you pick up on any other interesting techniques?
Well, especially in track 7, you talking about the rounds. Like I picked that up throughout the whole piece where or the whole album, where it feels like it's minimalistic in the sense that it mimics the style of minimalism, and that like it kind of like, here's the theme, we're gonna move the theme to this instrument, and then we're gonna change a little thing here, and then we're gonna kind of like build off of it. It didn't have as much progression as I wanted it to, but it was very dense, and it did have a lot of ideas that went through the album. I can't remember which one it was. I took notes on everything I listened to, but I can't remember which one.
Yeah.
It maybe Fool's Errand, but I get that like 60s pop feel, like especially in some of the guitar riffs. Like it sounds like they're alluding to either like 80s or 60s guitar, like yeah, but it's a completely different guitar sound, because I'm so used to them doing just acoustic guitar with that very dry bass, and then right there they get that electric guitar sound that's just kind of like, what y'all doing?
Yeah. All right. Moving into some more detail here. I love track 8 on Another Ocean. It's really smooth transfer from a typical album sound into a super groove. When that bass line hits, I'm up out of my seat, I'm dancing around. How'd you feel about that track?
And that groove is something that like you like about, like I feel like people like about Fleet Foxes. I feel like in that song, they're really sticking to their roots. They're kind of, I don't mean to say that they're pandering, but it feels like they're pandering to their crowd, their fan base, while still being able to explore throughout the rest of the album. There's like a couple songs where they do that. If You Need To, Keep Time on Me.
Yeah,
I felt like that was also, it was a very simple one, and it took me forever to like it. But the more I listened to it, I started to appreciate how they changed from major to minor, but they also still kept, they went back and pulled a little bit from their old Fleet Foxes roots. And whenever I think of like Fleet Foxes, I think back to their self-titled album, and maybe like Sun Giant EP, but and then at the end of that If You Need To, they really play with the instruments as less of like having musical function and more of like ambience, because it literally sounds like the song is being dissolved into an ocean. And that it's sort of like vague and broad, but I have no other way to describe it.
If You Need To, Keep Time on Me. That one did stick out because it's so different from most of the tracks on the album, but I definitely feel like it is necessary, because if you had more of the same, it would just wash over.
Oh yeah, because
it stuck out quite a bit.
Yeah, the whole album just feels like a wall of sound. Yeah. And not in the sense that like, wow, that's powerful. It's just sometimes it just becomes noise. But we're so used to that. Listen to that 5/1, that resolution, that tension resolution. It's just, the whole album just feels like mild tension the whole time. Not enough for me to want it to resolve, but not enough for me to feel comfortable.
Gotcha. Can you pick up on a sense of maturity from the last release to this one? Since it's been the longest hiatus of the band's discography so far.
Because That's a really good question. Whenever I think of like albums that take forever to come out, I always think Arcade Fire, and I'm talking about Arcade Fire again. But like the time between Reflector and their single was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and
Wow.
I mean I can kind of appreciate that from Fleet Foxes in the sense that like, because this album barely sounds like anything else they do. And I can appreciate the fact that they took the time and released something they wanted to release. I feel like they wholeheartedly wanted to release this, and the way they wanted to release it. Sorry, excuse me.
It's cool.
But if I don't feel like they released the album and instantly went back straight to, try to create things. I don't know. I didn't look up what they said they did or anything like that. But
Right.
I'm assuming they like released it, kind of hung out for a little bit, and then decided
Took a break, yeah, for sure.
they wanted to like write something, and then
I mean, it's their biggest album, so it's like we can chill. We don't need to make anything for a long time. We're good.
yeah, exactly. So I feel like they're having fun with this and exploring where they can go and what they can do with instruments, because like they used a lot of non-conventional like percussion instruments
Right.
that really helped convey things, and they used instruments in a weird way that helped them convey different thoughts. So I think they're just playing with sound. So I feel like anything after this is going to be really them figuring out what they want to do.
Let's talk about Pop Appeal since we're on the topic. Fleet Foxes were on Sub Pop, but for this album switched to None Such Records. Did you notice a change of sound at all with that? And are you noticing a Pop Appeal change? Could it ever live up to Helplessness Blues?
No.
No.
I mean, honestly, I like this album better than that. And I'm risking the absurdity of sounding pretentious and up my own asshole when I say this, but the average listener, I don't feel like can fully appreciate this album in the sense, because you really got to tear this album apart. You've got to be dedicated to listening to this album. Like me included, at first listen, I was pretty whelmed.
Yeah.
And then you listen through it again, and it starts to get pretty good. You have to actually delve into what you're listening to. Like I'm looking forward to actually kind of like taking apart the lyrics again, looking at the lyrics.
Right.
Because, but I don't see it living up to the same like caliber in the sense of like reception from the public, because the public wants to hear that other stuff. They want to hear the pop appeal. Like you gotta be able to like listen to it when you're jogging or something, or like you're on the radio having a bad day. I want to listen to this. No, I want to listen to something that has a little dance feel. I don't want to listen to some song disappear into the ocean.
Right. Yeah.
This album feels like art music as opposed to like pop music.
Yes. I definitely agree. How do you feel about the production?
In this album, like there's so many points where I just have to turn it down because I feel like a lot of the sounds are just way too high. And I've had this conversation with a couple people where I'm just like, I don't like how things are mixed in general, because there's a lack of dynamic contrast, which makes music. So I feel like a lot more of this album could be a lot better if there were more dynamic contrast between certain instruments, certain parts of the songs. But I do appreciate what they do in this album, because they do a little bit of that. They do a little bit of that. The first track on the album is so freaking quiet. I had to crank up my stereo in my car while I'm working.
Right.
And just like I'm just listening for it get really, really close, and then boom, that wall of sound is just kind of like...
it explodes. It absolutely explodes, yeah.
And then there's another... and then the second track as well, it starts out really slow and really quiet. And he's just kind of like, he's really vocal frying in it. And you do that dynamic contrast at the beginning, and then it kind of opens up. But then besides that, I don't really hear any of that. I just feel like it's back to sound qualities being pushed to as high as they can be without distorting.
Track transitions aren't a new trick for the Fleet Foxes band, but it feels like it's being pushed more so on this album. How did you feel about it?
I felt the transitions between each track were really good, but there
Yeah.
were transitions within tracks from different things
Oh,
I just
okay.
didn't dig. Like
Gotcha.
all these tracks that like the first track and the third track, they have these huge abrupt changes, and they kind of work. They're kind of really raw, and I don't think they were trying to. There wasn't like any transition really. It was just kind of like, okay, we're changing.
Yeah.
But from track to track, it's pretty cool. Like I think it's Cassidy's "To Kept Woman." That little guitar, not the guitar, that piano outro, which goes into "Kept Woman," is really cool. Not a fan of the song "Kept Woman," but I am a fan of that transition. So.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I dug the transitions between tracks. I didn't dig the transitions between ideas.
Makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. I'd like to talk about some songs individually. Third of May being the first single that they dropped for this album, has this really long, obscure instrumental cloud track on the back end of it. How do you feel about that track?
I wrote a little paragraph about it.
Okay, go for it.
As you said, like it's a little introspective, and it feels disconnected. It gives, because the rest of the song is kind of like in reality almost, and I feel like the outro is, it's this, it's the way they express like being slightly disconnected from reality, at least from the way I hear it. Because there's a lot of stuff that like there's what did I put in there? There's the sounds within that were previously played within the song beforehand, before the outro, also clashed with like stuff that doesn't make any sense, which kind of gives it that distant feeling. Like it doesn't feel it, and I never felt like it was going to go anywhere. It felt very bloated and very in one spot. Bloated is not a good word, but it had no direction to it. It was very stagnant, which works for it, because I mean it's mildly busy and noisy. It has a lot of stuff happening with nothing happening at the same time. And one thing I found cool, they were messing with the soundscape in that they had they were just cluttering the soundscape with all these different sounds and just whatever, but they were clashing acoustic sounds with electronic sounds. So you had all their acoustic instruments like the guitar, the piano. I thought I heard a harp. I probably didn't hear a harp, but and then you had some little synth noises as well, which really, I dug it, but it was weird. And I feel like this being like released as a single is them saying like, we're changing. This is what you can expect.
Very true. I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, totally. Well, it's interesting. We go from this huge cloud to very minimal "Keep Time on Me," to off to Muric Skepta, then dancing out of our seats on another ocean, staying lively with Fool's Errand, energetically. And then the lyrics, as we follow them, they start to fall off into a free fall, washing up to a conclusion into the ocean on Crack Up.
I feel like it's definitely that. Talking about if you need to keep time with me, one thing I really appreciated about it, and I didn't until I had to listen to it a couple times, was their change. They would just subtly change from major to minor throughout. So it started happy, in the sense that it's in major, and then it'll switch to minor. And I thought that was cool because if you look at some of the lyrics around when they switch, there's a lot of word painting. So it's like they'll be talking about something a little bit upbeat, and then it'll switch to minor, and it'll be a little bit more pessimistic. And I think the words are just a little ambiguous, so I'm looking too deep into that. Like if you sang the same words in different keys, you would have different views on them. But I feel like the switch to major to minor really, it kind of keeps it fresh. It makes it not the most boring piece, you know?
What are some of your favorite tracks?
To me, Muric Stapa is the most interesting in the fact that, like, they're so blatant in their use of non-functional harmony, which is really cool. Like, what was it in Cassius? They're not so much. It's some of the most underrated songs are the weirdest ones to me because they really kind of delve into places they shouldn't musically. They shouldn't be there. But there's so many of the other songs that are just long, but they just drone in one key over and over again. The 3rd of May, actually, I did dig it for a while, but the more I listened to it, the more I started realizing it drones in the same key. And so, like, it's like there's that one note that just sticks out a little bit more, but it's in every other key, every other chord that they modulate to, so it will always stick out to me. So every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, I hear do, I hear do, I hear do. Not a bad track, but it's just a lot of them they do drone a lot in one key.
Okay.
Which kind of alienates you from where the key center is, I guess, which works out in their favor. But if they're trying to do that, my favorite's gotta be Mixtapa, just because it's so weird.
Okay.
And then Cassius is all right. I did listen to it a lot, but I feel the first half of the album is way better than the back half.
All right, the time has come for a full #Josh review. Go ahead and take on the album.
Let's see. I think there's a lot of interesting sounds in here that are worth listening to. A lot of stuff that works. There's not a lot of anything that doesn't work. There's a lot of the transition reminds me of the album Yeezus, in the sense that he just really breaks through a lot of his transitions, similar to like Death Grip's transitions, even though those sound nothing like genre-wise, they sound nothing like this, but their transitions are really the same. I do like the flow of the album. I do feel like there's a story being told, and a little ambiguous story. You know, I don't think we can read we can read all the lyrics straight down and feel like we know the story. You got to do some digging and some searching and some inferences, and you know, he's even discussed some of the album, some of the lyrics. He's left a couple comments on Lyric Genius.
Yeah.
What else did I say about this thing? It's got a lot of synth, so if you're into that, I think you'll like it. Sticks to the vocal techniques they always use, which is great. The bass line's very, very simple but very effective. There's not too much and not enough. There's like, it's right in the sweet spot of what a bass player should be playing. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good album. It's worth a listen. If you're not really into thinking too much, and I don't mean like, I'm not trying to be rude, but like, if you're not really into really kind of festering on a piece or a piece of music, or, you know, I don't think you'll really enjoy it, because it's not easy listening. To enjoy it, you have to be listening to it. But overall, yeah, I'd suggest you listen to it. I'd give it like a high 6, low 7. You know, I like it. I do like it. I feel like that's a pretty good rating, honestly.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned it before, but there's a lot of stuff in here that sounds like Arcade Fire's Funeral album.
Okay.
Especially in the piano stuff. The piano stuff, and then the driving, like the driving percussion sets. So like, dun 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 dun. Especially in Cassius, especially sounds like something from Arcade Fire's Funeral, which is cool, but they have a different take on it. There's a lot of things that aren't Fleet Foxes in this. Even the songs we say aren't Fleet Foxes, they still hold to that sound, especially like that iconic, that iconic voice layering that they always do. Like, no one else does the harmonies and the voices like Fleet Foxes does. And they stick to it because it's popular, and throughout this whole album, they stick to it. That's what works for them. That's what they're known for. Like, if they got rid of that completely, like how they sing, I don't think this album would have been as great as they wanted it to be. It wouldn't have been a Fleet Foxes album. It would have been a Robin Pecknold album, you know?
You're easily a bigger Fleet Foxes fan than me. So looking at the songwriting, production, lyricism, how do you compare this record to past records?
But compared to those albums, it's nothing. It's nothing the same. Like I started listening to Fleet Foxes in high school, and I kind of took a hiatus from them until last year, and I was like, man, why did I stop listening to this? But I mean, the typical Fleet Foxes songs that everyone knows is Mykonos, which is a song about Greece. You have that Grecian connection again, which is cool. And then you have their self-titled album, which has a lot of great songs on it, especially like Whitewater Hymnal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. That's kind of, I feel like that's where they really got the way they texture their voices. You know,
Right.
I feel like that is where that comes from.
Okay.
I have so many good things to say about this group, but this album is not what they're known for. You know,
Right.
like
Right.
this it pulls very little of what they've established as their sound into this album.
Mm-hmm. Generally, are you happy with the band's progression, or would you rather recede them back to their old roots?
Huh. I think I like where they're going in the sense, like it's been done. They've already done it. Why do it again? I appreciate the fact that they're kind of throwing their formula away to find a new formula to create different sounds and different musics. Like if you spend your whole career making the same sounds and the same music, it's gonna get a little old, you know.
Definitely.
And I appreciate that they're sticking to they're keeping the ideas that the people want to hear and the reason that people like them, while also exploring new frontiers of music in the soundscape. You know. So I really appreciate where they're going with this. As long as they keep pushing forward, I'd be real interested if they like came out with atonal stuff. I don't think they will, but yeah, if they did, if y'all hear this, you should make some atonal music and really go ham on that, because I'll geek out over that. But I do like where they're going. I really do like what they're doing.
They could easily put out the same album they just did, blow up, make tons of money, but no, he's trying to artistically challenge himself and his listeners too. He's trying to expand everyone's views on his band and also some different sounds that they might not have heard before.
Also throw in some of that social commentary, which is
Definitely.
He's not trying to reach expectations. He's trying to challenge his audience to something new. All right, well, thank you for this little review.
Yeah, dude, this is awesome. This is so much fun, dude. We should do this. We can do this again, man. This is fun.
Welcome back. The conclusion of our nautical journey is here. Was it all that it cracked up to be? Oh, for Flower Boy, the capsize was merely figurative. Fleet Fox has crafted an immersive project that yawed from its typical discography. Although this may leave some mainline fans cast overboard. That's all we have for today. Hope you enjoyed your time. Johnny Bozo, hit it!